Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 10th edition of the Toronto Black Film Festival, founded by the Fabien Colas Foundation, co-presented by TD in collaboration with Global News. Available online from February 16th to the 21st, 2022. Be sure to get your all-access pass on torontoblackfilm.com. That's torontoblackfilm.com. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Shakur Saida, and I'm your moderator for tonight. Before we begin, out of deep respect, we acknowledge and recognize that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. This panel is called Music and Film, and boy, oh boy, are you in for a treat. We've got really great guests here who are going to tell you all about music and film in as short a period of time as possible. So I want to just introduce them all to you first. Simon Poole has been a composer for film, television, and advertising for the past 15 years. He's a graduate of the UCLA Film Scoring Program and is a former composer in residence at the Canadian Film Center. Most recently, he scored season 1 of Overlord and the Underwoods, airing on CBC Gem. Amos Adutui is a CEO at Circle Blue Entertainment. He is also an award-winning Canadian producer and executive producer with over 20 years of experience in the film and television industry. He is the producer of the groundbreaking television drama series Digstown, currently in its 3rd season, airing on CBC. Robert Ball has been a working singer for over 20 years. He's a background singer, recording artist. He does cruise ships, musical theater, and is a session singer. Robert has lent his voice to, Robert has had his music placed in TV and film, and as a session singer, he has lent his voice to film projects and various recordings. Recently, he has stepped into the role of producer, working on a talk show series. He's also currently writing and developing a musical intended for stage and screen, as well as a documentary about the artistic legacy of his family. Kaya Pino is a music supervisor and curator at the Wilders in Toronto, blending a deeply personal understanding of music's effect on both audience and art form, with an ability to create relationships between music, movement, rhythm, and sound. Kaya takes on an anthropological I hope I said that right, approach to music supervision. She started her career in advertising and continues to work in the branding space alongside film and series projects. Recent credits includes Sort of with CBC, HBO Max, Ginny and Georgia on Netflix, No Ordinary Man on Parabola Films, and One of Ours, Sienna Films. Cheryl Fogo is a multiple award-winning playwright, author, and filmmaker whose work over the last 30 years has focused on the lives of Western Canadians of African descent. Recent works include the release of her NFB feature program documentary, John Ware Reclaimed, available at nfb.ca, as well as the 30th anniversary edition of her book, Pouring Down Rain, A Black Woman Claims Her Place in the Canadian West. Her play, The Cinder, can be viewed as part of Obsidian Theater's 21 Black Futures. She has multiple projects upcoming in 2022, including a production of her play Heaven at Lunchbox Theater. Cheryl is the recipient of the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta Outstanding Artistic Award, the Doug and Lois Mitchell Outstanding Calgary Artist Award, and the Arts, Media, and Entertainment Award from the Calgary Black Chambers, all in 2021. Welcome to our panel, everyone. How are you today?
Good. It's great to be here.
It's great to see you all, and I'm so proud I got through all of that without my reading glasses. I'm just I'm ever so proud of that. So we talked a little bit before this panel started about music and film and how it pertains to us. And what I wanted to ask first, Simon, I was wondering if you can speak a little bit about where we started, when you first started with music and film. What was it like, and where are we now as a composer?
Well, if you'd have asked me or anybody else, 10 or 15 years ago, what the path to writing music for film would be, most of the answers you'd get would have been something like, well, you're going to have to study composition at a post-secondary level. You're going to have to move to one of the major production cities, which is usually like London or LA, and you're going to have to sort of intern with someone who's already sort of established and learn as an apprentice and come up the ranks. Fast forward to nowadays, I think it's a lot easier for someone with their own voice to get discovered via Spotify or YouTube or whatever way people are getting their music out right now, as the barriers to entry don't exist in the same way they used to, and the demands and requests that producers and directors make and that the audience makes as well isn't what it used to be either. So there's a lot more room for experimentation and new voices, and it's a lot less rigid and structured in the way it used to be.
How does that pertain to, let's just get right into it. How does that pertain to Black people, people of color, in terms of music? Does that mean our music is more accepted? Does that mean that perhaps our music is more desirable? How does that pertain to us?
I think the desirability probably still rests in the creator to try and make something that resonates, but the same academic and financial barriers to entries aren't necessarily there. So you can get in on much more of a grassroots street level than the previous hierarchy that has existed in the past. Okay. I think in that sense, it's a lot more open for anyone to try and develop and broadcast their voice.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit later about how exactly to get into it. But Amos, you started in this industry as you mentioned, during our pre-panel that you were a musician. So how has the landscape shifted as a musician going into, television, producing, and now actually having award-winning shows? How has it shifted for you?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Simon says. It's shifted. I mean, when I was going into music school and production, we had what was called 2-inch tape, which is a very fat tape. That's how old I am. So the tools have become so accessible now that for a young artist, let's say a young Black artist, a musical artist, composer, can really create some really amazing stuff in short order and get it into the ear of producers and creators and directors. And that's so instantaneous now, and that's what's amazing. We listen to all kinds of music from all kinds of people just so quickly. It says, "Oh, have you heard this on Spotify from so and so?" And then next thing you're talking to them about, well, can I use your music as a needle drop in a feature or in a TV series? And ideally, of course, get to the place where they're now composing for either of those formats or whatever kind of a content format. So I think it's really a cool time to be a composer. And in terms of Black content music, I mean, it's as popular as ever in a sense, but I think with these barriers down, I think Black composers themselves have more access to the industry, so to speak, so that it's not just other people emulating, let's say, their music, that now there's an opportunity for direct connections to be made. It's not like, oh, give me that, I want that jazz or that R&B sound. And it's like, no, let's just get somebody who does that.
Who does that sound. So let's not get the guy that sounds like James Brown. Let's actually get James Brown. Even though I know.
The young James Brown.
Yeah. The new James Brown. Now, you mentioned a term that some of us know what it is, but would you just explain for those who might not know, what exactly is a needle drop?
Well, that's when we purchase songs that we put into a feature film, TV series. It's technically called the synchronization rights and the publishing rights to that song. We purchase them so that we could put it into the material, and it's of course very helpful for the artist. It's not necessarily a big amount of cash. Sometimes it is if the song is hugely popular. Then it flips around where we're paying for that. And the other side of it is like, we're just looking for music. It's a great little piece of music, but nobody's heard it much beyond the artist's circle. Well, there's not such a big fee, but it gets exposure. So it's a needle drops are an important part of the whole, people coming up in the music industry in film and music, for sure.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Cheryl, you're out west, and I know that you make it a point of inviting Black people in as much as possible to be a part of your creations, your films, your theater, your everything that you're doing. So can you please tell me how, this is one of your questions. I'm going to steal this for you. What comes first? Are you making your images with music in your mind? Have you listened to a certain artist and then you've sculpted your films to suit that music? How exactly do you go about your process? How did you go about it before, and how are you going about it now?
That's a great question. And I really appreciate being here and learning on behalf of young artists who are here, who want to know how to work in this business. It's really interesting for me to listen to Simon and Amos, and I'm sure I'm going to hear more from Robert and Kaya as well, because I have used the same process for a long time, because music is so much a part of who I am and who I have always been. It's been a part of my life since I was a child. And I've been listening to different forms of Black music. It seeps into my work because it's in my bones and it's in my blood. So I have always had music in the forefront of my mind for all my projects, especially the projects that have a soundscape. So my plays, my films, I am always thinking about music as soon as I know what the story is that I'm trying to tell. And I would say even that there's a musicality, and that music seeps into my prose as well, into my books. So my process hasn't changed very much. What has changed is the availability of different kinds of music that I can find on the internet, or a producer I'm working with can say, have you heard this? Or they make me a playlist on Spotify, or I might do the same. So the process of creating my work remains similar to what it's always been, and the connection, the very strong connection between music that appears in my films and in my other works. But the way of going about it is different. So we've done some needle dropping. We did that in John Ware Reclaimed. But for John Ware Reclaimed, I worked with the musicians that I had worked with on the play that is called John Ware Reimagined. I've been doing a lot for anyone in the audience who doesn't know. John Ware was an amazing Black cowboy who arrived in my part of the world, what we know as Southern Alberta now, in 1882. And he's a bit of an obsession for me, and he would be for you too, if you knew, if you only knew. And so because I had worked with musicians on John Ware Reimagined, I worked with the same musicians. There's a lot of the same music in John Ware Reclaimed. So lots of back and forth crossover in the forms in which I work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Robert, you are an artist, a vocalist, and I had the pleasure of listening to you in Stratford last year. We made the road trip drive out to Stratford, and was very pleased by the standing ovation that you got for one of your solos. And your voice is pure honey, absolutely gorgeous. And we spoke a little bit again in the pre-panel about finding your voice, being able to establish your voice, and then wanting to sell your voice. And you're now going from being a vocalist who wants to be, hired to do these things, to being someone who actually wants to create your own work and do your own soundscapes. But let's talk about the Blackness. Let's talk about do infuse your music with your Blackness? Do you infuse it with your culture? Is it just about artistic choices? Like, those all sound like the same thing, but they're not, if we're being straight about it. Do we want to be known as Black artists? Do we want to be known as artists, or do we want to be known as, cultural ethnics?
I think the complicated and yet beautiful part for us is that we get to choose and be both. We are just artists, but we are also Black artists. And so I think there's power in that, also complication in that. Speaking about what is your voice and what is that, I know for me, the ancestors live in this. They live in my instrument. And people have asked me before, do I think about my family legacy? We spoke a little bit in the pre-panel about the Ball family Jubilee singers, who were my great-great-grandparents and my great-grandfather. And there's not a time I don't think about them and honor them when I get an opportunity to perform. And so for that, I say they live in my instrument, but also in terms of the sound, the aesthetic, I know that it has that Black sound. But also having some training and formal training and having worked with singers in the classical genres and European classical genres and other areas, they are still Black artists because their vocal aesthetic or their musical aesthetic is something outside of what we know as African diasporic, does not make them any less a Black artist. And so it is interesting and complicated for us to have these conversations around what that is and how we define it. And I think it is individual. I really do think it is individual.
Thank you. And so for you to make that shift from being a vocal artist to being someone who's going to be creating a soundscape and perhaps going out and looking for other musicians to be part of your work. I'm available. Just call me. You got my number. How does that shift feel for you? Is that something that you're looking forward to, or you're nervous about? Does it feel natural for you to make this shift?
It feels natural. I admit that, as many people, I suffer with imposter syndrome, but it feels natural because it's all of the things aligning. So as a working artist over many years, having worked throughout the industry in various capacities, and then producing small concerts, producing a little bit larger shows and connectivity, I didn't actually actively look to work in, though it's always been a desire to work in film and TV on the music side, I didn't actively pursue it. I was being asked and hired to do sessions for it. Or I would work with a producer who was connected to a publishing company and song got placed. And so those stars have just started to align for me, where now that I'm working on my own projects, that connectivity just starts to work. And the things that I've learned along the way start to just make sense. I've learned a little bit of this along the way. I learned a little bit of that. Now I'm putting it all together. A little bit kind of like what Simon was saying, where you don't necessarily have to go to a formal institution for that particular vein anymore. But if you learned tricks and tools along the way, if depending on what your specialties are, you can culminate them to hopefully direct you in the right path. And so for me, I'm writing something, the original show, where certainly I'll be pulling from different artists. But then with my family legacy, I want to incorporate soundscape as well as live performance. So these are all things that I've learned along the way that I can bring with me to produce these projects.
Excellent. Thank you. So speaking about, Robert making these different shifts in his career, one of the people that he might have to get in touch with would be a music supervisor. And Kaya, when we talk about being an artist and wanting to be used by productions, one of the boundaries that comes up, one of the barriers that comes up is perhaps the fact that we only get used in instances where they know they want to hear Black music. In other words, they'll call me for the blues, the jazz, the soul, but they won't call me for the rock. As a music supervisor, what are some of the choices that you're making to change that for tomorrow? And also, what are some of the ways that we can change how producers think about Black voices or Black music in film?
I think from a music supervisor standpoint, there's a lot that you can do, because when we're putting music forward, we're putting music to picture. So it's really dependent on the song. So when you're putting all the value into the song and taking away the face from there, you're really opening up people to letting those barriers down, and you're just going it based on merit. So I really particularly try to find artists that are of color, that are outside of particularly Black identifying genres, to make sure that we're spreading around the money, especially in Canada. And in some productions, mainly like more popular ones, or less specific, more general stories, you have trends to what type of sounds are being there. In Canada, we see a lot of indie, folk, singer-songwriter used, and people generally think of those as being more white genres. But anybody could sing that music, anybody could be influenced by that music, and anybody can create it. So I think it's really important for the creators to find what music they want to make, rather than what music people expect from them or think that they should make. And just follow that, because you will be found, and there's actually more opportunities in certain instances to have that plethora. So I look at it in, okay, it's just going to the song, and I can put it to my my clients, and then they just go off the merit of the sound, and they don't end up knowing who it is, but that person knows who it is, I know who it is, and people find that artist. It's a really exciting time in music supervision, because we have technology that helps us find what those songs are. It's not only the same days of, oh, I heard that lyric, and you go and Google it, or you wait to hear what it is again to find out what the artist is. We have platforms like Shazam. You can find out where the artist is right away, add it to your library, and that's somebody who converts from being just an audience member to a fan. So it's a really important tool, I think, for musicians right now, because it's also a revenue stream that hasn't gone away with the pandemic. A lot of musicians find their money in touring. They find new audiences in touring, and they find sustainability in that, but we don't have that anymore. So another way of doing that is through music supervision and having your music licensed. It's going to keep going. Content isn't stopping. If anything, it's ramping up. And so there's a lot of opportunities at all different levels.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Talk to us about where you see, past where you've gone. Simon mentioned AI in our pre-panel talk. He mentioned that AI is basically going to take my job away, Kaya. That's what he said. He basically said, I'm not going to have a job anymore. They're not going to hire me to sing. I'm going to be, on a corner somewhere with a broken guitar. So talk to me about where you see music in film in 10 years. Like, how do you see people getting music to you? How do you see you finding the best artists? How do you see music lifting film?
So the way that I see music in media changing as we progress in technology is through discovery and is through distribution. So the discovery is, what type of platforms are we going to use? We had the rise of various streaming services. I'm across all of them. There's Bandcamp, there's SoundCloud, there's Spotify, there's Apple Music. We'll see what becomes next. And that's how they monetize. That's how we discover things. It's playlisting. It's a huge footprint for these artists. And then now I use TikTok religiously. One, to support my mental health because it's so funny, but also I find so much new music there. It is a sound-based platform. So I think where we're going to discover more music will be in these different platforms that come up. And then on the distribution side, or how we consume it, is all these different platforms that pop up. We're going to have to figure out how to use music there. So as I work in advertising as well, we've gone from licensing music to be on TV, to licensing music to be on TV and online, to looking at that, okay, is that now pre-roll? Is that social? Now we've introduced TikTok, and that's different levels of things that we have to account for. Some people are looking at, okay, what does that look like for NFTs and licensing music? Because now we have ways of tracking where things are used. So you can't just drop in a song that you didn't clear the rights for and you didn't pay for. It has benefits and cons on both sides for creation, and then also making sure people get paid. But I think that those are the two ways that we're going to see media and music evolve over the next few years, or next many years.
Thank you for that. Simon, talk about these AI people. Or I guess they're not people, they're
They're not
robots.
people.
I know they're robots, I know.
Well, I think this goes back into the whole, finding your own voice and being the only person who can do what it is you do. Because if everyone fashions themselves in the previously cast mold, that's what AI is drawing from. So you're contributing to your future redundancy by not finding a way to stand out from the crowd and not finding something unique.
Well, I need you to repeat that again for everybody in the back. Just say that whole
No
thing
idea what I
again.
just said. That was blinders, just stream of consciousness.
But that was deep. That was so deep.
I think it had something to do with contributing to your own redundancy by not, getting ahead of the future and
Yes.
forging, the path less traveled.
Wow. Wow. And Cheryl, how do you see music moving for you in your films? You had a question for everybody about how they see music and film and what goes first. Is there someone in the panel that you'd like to direct that question to specifically, you think?
Yeah, I'm very interested in everyone's perspective on that. And just for you, Kaya, what is your process like? Do you have music in your mind that you are saying to yourself all the time, I need to get this into a project? Or do you really look at the project first and familiarize yourself with that? Or even a short, even in advertising, do you study the product first and then think about the music? Or do you ever have music already in your mind that you want to bring before people and before people like those on this panel who are working on these amazing projects? How would you interact with us?
So how I always have music in my head. It's just constantly going all the time. And I have tons of favorites and things that I hold on to and keep in my back pocket when the opportunity comes up. But when I start working with somebody, I get an idea of what's going on in the piece, what the commercial's about, what the brand is, what the story's about, and then ask a couple of questions about it. What is the background of those specific, more in film than in advertising, but what is the backstory of these characters? Sometimes I like to say, what are the main characters? How do they find music? Did they get it from a parent? Do they get it from a best friend? Are they diggers? Are they not diggers? What is their heritage? Does that matter to them? Where are they geographically? Does that impose on them? Maybe they have a TV program that they watch often, or they're a certain age and we're having a very specific time and place that the setting of the story is happening. So then I can pick up, okay, what's in the zeitgeist at that time? And maybe there's something that zeroes in specifically on that geography, and sort of start pulling on all of those references and put together like an initial playlist of just building a palette of where we are. Because then you get into the trickier parts down the line of like, okay, what does that mean? Budget and timing and all of that. But I like to start with a big palette so that we can just share references and I can really jump in and maybe go too far sometimes, or maybe a sound comes up that you didn't think about. Oh, I really identified with their, really wanted to get into their Trinidadian heritage, right? But I didn't want to go into more recent soca. I wanted to go into the very early sides of soca that isn't as fast. And, where does this stuff come from? So I usually do that and build a palette and sort of run from there. Sometimes you hit the mark and sometimes you don't. And they're like, actually, I just want top 40 pop that's up. And, regardless of the story, this is a song that spoke to me as a child. So this is what I want. And then it just becomes you got it. You're the client. Let's go get that. I hope you have enough money for it. So to really match it, a bit of that. But my favorite part about this is searching. You guys are all musicians and, artists. I'm just a set of ears. I have no talent. I don't make music or anything like that. I used to be a dancer. So I feel like I have it a bit in my body, but yeah, so then I'm just a pair of ears and listening to different things that are going on. In the ad world, it's definitely paying attention to target audiences and what the brand identity is, where the brand is right now, and then also brand safety. But it's been really interesting in the branding world. I do a lot of branded content or artist partnerships where we have a brand that comes to us and they say, okay, this is our mission, or this is what the story is about, and we want to connect with local artists. And that's what I find more exciting, because they generally have more money and I love to give artists money. And so we pull them in and say, hey, this is an artist, this is their story, this is their sound. I think it would pair really well. You know, they're somebody who's game to play, answer quickly, they're interested in social opportunities, and sort of craft the story that way.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's talk about being a Canadian artist. Amos, do you feel obligated or a bit of pressure to look for Canadian artists first? Or do you just, I mean, to follow up on Cheryl's question, do you sometimes have a song in your head and it's not Canadian and you just keep thinking about, man, when I get to put that song in there, you know, for that needle drop? I'm just like saying needle drop, you know.
It's a it could be both, right? I mean, on one season of Digstown, we had a great song from oh, I just lost her name now, but one of the famous female singers, black singers of all time that's alive. She's 70 something. I just had a blank moment, but we actually got one of her, not Aretha Franklin, but another, but that level.
Gladys Knight.
Yeah, but we got the
Betty
song.
LaBette.
So that was cool. But what we ultimately always look for is Canadian artists. You know, that's especially when we're putting music into the film, into the series from various sources. And just to spin off something that Kay was saying as well. I mean, one season we actually had a bunch of different, mostly Black Canadian artists, needle drops that we were working with. And then we thought, well, let's promote that aspect of the TV series. And we went and recorded in the studio them playing the songs that we were using in the music, just to create a synergy, and then put that out on Facebook as a separate kind of add-on that people could go to if you signed up for it. And it was a really interesting experiment to create a cross talk of social media. We had about 4 or 5 artists, and we recorded it, especially in the studio, these sessions, like Digstown sessions. And so absolutely, I mean, we pursue Canadian artists. Our attitude is that there's a lot of Black Canadian artists out there sound as good as, you know, American songs we could get. And so why would we just go to that, you know, whether you're talking hip hop, R&B, or, as again pointed out, folk and rock, you know, there's Black artists across every genre at this point, which is very cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may kind of jump on Cheryl's question and that connectivity there. For me, it certainly, I think, has always been music first, but a large part of it has also been, I kept hearing, if you don't see yourself, write it for yourself, develop it for yourself, make it for yourself. And so I know for one of the shows that I'm writing, it was music that came first, but then in constantly hearing that, I started to develop story and actually build a show around it. Because I found for myself, as not just a working singer, but as an artist, I fit between veins. I'm the similar age as Beyonce and Usher, but I've never been super that contemporary R&B. Never been completely R&B, never been completely jazz, never been completely gospel, never been completely classical, never been completely musical theater. I fit somewhere in amongst all of that, right? Black and gay, all of the above. So it's been a matter of me developing for myself, writing for myself, but then also kind of what everyone is saying is also finding your own vein and your own lane and seeing where you fit. And so it's been a little bit of the both for me, but then also then with the documentary, it's the story because it's my history, it's my family history and legacy. Now I'm going backwards and doing research on the music that they may have been singing to figure out what that looks like for that. So it's a little bit of both for me anyway.
Beautiful. Thank you. I know for me, as an artist, I wrote a play called The Nina Project, and I came up with the story first, which was to follow Nina from her childhood until the civil rights movement. And then I went through her music and figured out which songs would fit, either the lyrics of songs or the melodies of songs that would fit within the story, and in order to give it the rise. And it was the first time I'd ever done that, because I'd always been music first. But this one time I went for the story. And when I'm on stage touring, it's always, what story am I trying to give to the audience? And so I'm trying to use that with all of my writing as well. It changes. So we've got about 15 minutes left, and I want to give our listeners an opportunity to hear from an expert. So I'm going to call on you to give me one thing that a person who is someone in your field, or someone who wants to get to be in your field, should know. And I'm going to go first because he looks so eager. I'm going to go to Simon. Simon, as a composer, what is something that you can tell someone out there who is a composer, and tell them about how to get into this business and how to be successful in this business?
Well, I'm gonna kind of pass the buck on to a much more established composer, and then sort of draw from that. There's a really excellent composer named James Newton Howard, and he has a great quote that I'm probably paraphrasing when asked a similar question, and it's, just write the music and the rest will take care of itself. And I think that's a fairly open-ended statement, which is good, because I think everyone can take that and superimpose it onto their own experience. For me, what that means is, don't spend a lot of time looking at the peak of the mountain. Just focus on your next foothold. And if you want to make it even more sort of cliche, it's the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? I wouldn't be so focused on an end goal and think that I have to make it here by this time, or have any expectations like that. I think the only thing you really have control of is what you put out there, and how you put it out there. And I would really suggest to anyone who wants to get anywhere in music is to just write what you feel like you have to, not what you should or what's expected of you, but what you absolutely must. Like, if you had 1 year left on the planet, what do you have to get out? And don't even necessarily think about it past that. Just make that one statement. And
Okay.
after you've made it, you'll regroup, and you'll have another statement to make after that. But
So
only get out that one statement.
So I'm a composer, and I've just written this music that I had to get out, and I know it's the right thing to do because Simon said so. Simon said, "Hey." So now, what am I going to do, Simon? What's my next step? I've got the music. I know it's great music. What's my next step as a composer?
I'd say from a creative standpoint, do the next piece. From a professional standpoint, get it in front of the right people.
Who are the right people?
Kai is the right people.
So music supervisors.
One of many people, yeah. Amos is the right people. Not necessarily. You don't even need to directly address people, but make yourself discoverable. Like Kaya was saying, she's on all the platforms, and playlisting is a big thing. So your stuff has to be available. It doesn't necessarily need to be thrust in someone's face, but it has to be made capable for discovery. It has to be somewhere where someone's going to just reach out into the ether and find it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Robert, I know you have to leave us soon, so I'm going to ask you next. As a vocalist, as someone who's a multi-vocalist, and somebody who's now creating their own, someone is just like you, and they've got the voice, and they too were born around the same time as Beyonce and Usher, and and they're creating their own thing. What is there that they should know to get them to that next step?
There are a couple of things that I say a lot when I mentor. It's think and be entrepreneurial. And a lot of nowadays I think you have artists doing that, but a lot of artists, like, they want that connect, they want that big break, they want to perform, that's it. But when I say be entrepreneurial, I started producing my own concerts, booking a venue, doing a show, hiring the musicians, promoting it. When I had to do the flyers, I did it myself. And then many, many years later, I heard Issa Rae say not enough people network across. And then, regardless of your opinions on Issa Rae or Tyler Perry or Master P, those are all self-built people, because they took what $50 they had and they said, I am going to build. I'm going to reach out to my grandma, to my grandpa. Master P sold his record out of his trunk and circled until it was charting. Tyler Perry had $500 and rented a theater and did the play himself, because all the actors quit. You know, Issa Rae said network across. You might have a friend who's actually developing a film, and you're a singer, and somebody else is working here. Get together and develop a short film, do a project together, rent a theater, and do that. That's my biggest advice. That's what's kept me working. And so if I can encourage people to do that, that's what my advice would be.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here. I know you'll sign off when you have to, but it's been a pleasure listening to you, and good luck with your future projects.
Thank you also.
And remember, call a sister, right? Call me. All right, Cheryl, we're going to have a young filmmaker out somewhere out west or even out east, and they really want to get to that next step. Well, what wisdom do you have to give to them? What should they be doing to be as successful as you have been and as respected as you are?
I'm not saying this to minimize myself or to try to play small. But what I would say is that if I can do what I've done in this country, in this city where I live, I think you out there who I'm talking to, you young person, can do this too, because I am in a place where no one thinks about Blackness as even existing. And I, like Robert, love my heritage. I love and honor my place ancestors, you know, my blood ancestors who've been here for 110, 120 years, as well as my place ancestors who've been here for 140, 150 years, you know, the John Wares, the Annie Saunders, other kinds of people that I write about. And it is because I know who I am, and it is because of my belief that our stories really matter, that I've been able to do what I have done. And there have been many challenges, but I, like Robert, have had to self-produce. You know, I worked with Janelle Cooper of Ellipsis Tree Collective to get the first Black Canadian theater series in Alberta produced, because I wanted those works on the stage, and I wanted those young, beautiful, incredible actors and performers to work. And we had to make that happen ourselves because it wasn't happening. So I would say, don't be afraid to or ashamed to get your stuff out there, to rent the theater, to, you know, to go to the funding bodies, but yeah, to go to your, you know, your brother and say, you know, can you chip in $500? Because 10 people chipping in $500, that's, you know, that's 3 or 4 nights of that theater rented for us. And yeah, and just the stories that I tell have incredible meaning for me. So I think if your stories, if your songs, if your music, if your art means as much to you as mine does to me, then no matter where you are or who you are or what your circumstances are financially, you can make this happen.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very inspiring. Thank you very much for that. Kaya, I'm a young person, and I've never even known that there was such thing as a music supervisor, but now I know, and I know I get to watch TikTok all day long if I'm a music supervisor. So tell
You're
me.
not supposed to, but you do.
Okay, I won't tell anybody that I do this, but tell me, how do I become a music supervisor? How do I get people who are going to hire me to put music in their products? How?
It's definitely not a linear path. And when I discovered that this career existed, because that's, I think, a big piece of it is knowing that this even exists. A lot of people get into it in very different ways, and a lot have just stumbled into it. So I think the best way to do is to pull one of Simon's analogies is don't focus on the peak, like look at what's below it. So look at all the different ways that music supervisors interact with other people, our vendors, our suppliers, our labels and managers and publishers who have sync departments who work directly with music supervisors. There's sync agents that work directly with music supervisors. On the producer side, on the film side, there's people who work with music supervisors, editors that work with music supervisors. So maybe there's a different way of finding your path towards it, because there's not very many music supervisors. It's starting to grow a lot more now. Only in the past, I guess, 4 or 5 years has there even been an Emmy for music supervision. So there hadn't been an award outside of their own guild to look at music supervision. So it's still becoming more prevalent, but with some amazing pieces of work, people are really recognizing it. So it's still growing and emerging. And I think, again, there's no linear path. So find what's adjacent to it, find different ways. And then, as Robert said, networking is really important. Networking is so important. Volunteering is really important. Just showing that you're interested and you're willing to learn the full scope of things. You're not super just focused on being a music supervisor, but learning of what film means and what music means, to sort of move around and see if that is even the right spot for you. But it will take some time. I had to, stalk a lot of people before somebody decided to give me a chance, but it really just, you just really need to follow your path and be open to where it takes you.
Thank you very much for that. So stalking and TikTok. Got it. All right. So Amos, you are an award-winning producer, and so now I'm this person, and yeah, I want to produce. I want to make film. I want to make television shows, and I want to give my people jobs. So tell me, what is it that you think I should know, or someone like me should know?
Well, yeah, it's certainly is a path like so many. And I think it's just the determination, believe in who you are and what you can do, and don't be afraid to approach other people and share your vision with them. I think as a producer, you're actually basically a salesperson. That's the way I look at it. And what you are is you're selling your ideas. And the biggest challenge sometimes is to approach people with your ideas, just like a salesperson selling shoes. It's not an easy job because it's a lot of cold calls, this and that. But if you really believe in what you have and you go out there and you talk to people, the more people you talk to, the more chance you're going to connect with somebody who sees that in your vision and carries it forward with you. I think that's the challenge of a producer is rounding up all kinds of different people to believe in common goal, common project. And I mean that goes to music as well. It's such an important part of all the different projects we do. So as a young producer, you've got to convince a Simon Poole or a Robert, I like your music. Can you come in and do you got any money? No. But if you can convince them that this project is really great, that's what you have to be, a convincer, and as things grow and as you get to have budgets and to have things like that, and then it's like, well, you can call Simon back up and be like, hey, I got some money now. It was cool. Yeah, I helped you on that short or this, that. And these relationships build and they grow over time. It's a group of people that you come up with over time. 20 some almost 30 years for me, but I mean, in the early years, it was a group of people like-minded that you find. That's the challenge, is to not keep your group small, to step outside and to find more and more people that you can gather around and find connections with. Like, I'm sure I'm going to be connecting with Cheryl. I hope so. Fascinating projects. I had to talk to Simon as a composer. Okay, I didn't know that you were a music supervisor out there, so now I do. And same with Robert. That project that Robert has is fantastic. And of course, I'm already with you, Shakur. So it's about these things that your community, and there is, in terms of a Black community, it's a very much a growing community. So that's the exciting part as a young upcoming Black producer out there. Lots of new kind of opportunities that did not exist 5 years ago, never mind 15, 20. Anyway, there you go.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, my dog keeps drinking water. She's right next to me.
It's getting me thirsty.
It sounds like Niagara Falls. I want to give you all an opportunity to perhaps have a conversation with each other. Is there anything, Cheryl, thank you for the question that you asked Kaya. Is there anything, Mr. Simon or Kaya, that you would like to ask each other that you've always wondered about or that you've become curious about because of this panel? Anything at all that you would like to ask each other? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I want to just, is there anything that you wish someone had told you about the other jobs or about the other positions that are on the panel?
I have, sorry, Cheryl, go ahead.
I was going to say, if no one else has a question, I have another question for all of you, but you go, Simon.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I have so many questions for Amos about producing and how I understand absolutely nothing about it, but I don't feel like that's particularly helpful to this panel. So, by all means.
All right. Well, you know how to get in touch with Amos now, so you can be calling him up every single day. He won't mind. Cheryl, what's your question?
I'm thinking about a young man I know who's based in Calgary and is originally from Haiti. He's an incredible drummer, and he has an orchestra. And he doesn't like to be or need to be put into a particular box that someone might think of to look in that box to find him. How do you find someone like him, in just really in concrete terms? Like, I don't know, maybe he could make a TikTok that features his orchestra. It's really incredible to watch him conduct and drum and have a beautiful operatic Black woman singing his composition. And I'm genuinely wanting to know in concrete terms, what does someone like that who has just a really unusual package of skills do to get in front of you folks?
And let's just broaden that a little bit and just talk about people who are still very much grassroots, who might not know about being on social media, even though you think that everybody would know, but I know a lot of people who still really aren't on social media or who aren't really adept at it. How do we get those people involved in the film business and the television business and in commercials?
Yeah, like he will probably watch this panel, and it would be great if he walked away from this panel knowing what to do next.
Mm-hmm. Who would like to take this one?
Well, just based on the description alone, I can't think of anyone who sounds like that. I can't think of a Haitian percussionist with an orchestra and sort of a vocalist, and he's the conductor and composer. That sounds completely novel to me.
Sounds hot.
And amazing. That doesn't sound like doesn't sound like anything that I could think of already. So I feel like he probably doesn't need to work on anything other than just getting himself discovered, whether that's through recording or video or word of mouth. I guess again, this goes to just being discoverable. But it sounds to me like he's already got all the right pieces.
You know,
Yeah.
I
That
remember.
thing
Sorry,
sounds
go ahead.
interesting to me, but in my mind, it's so hard to have all this stuff come at you. You're approached by all kinds of different people. So I'm pointing to Kaya out there. That's music supervisors present us all these different artists and composers and things like that. So I would suggest that he gets in touch with Kaya and other music supervisors if he can get their attention. And but Cheryl, what you suggested, and Simon, that idea of him doing something, he has to record, has to put something down and get it out there, a few pieces.
He has to
TikTok,
go to the next stop.
YouTube,
Next step.
whatever, something. So it's just so easily anybody can just go click. Oh, that's him. And then so Kaya calls me and says, "Hey, you that thing for that thing. Click on this." And it's like, oh, but he's got to get to.
Yeah. So there's a couple, like there's a bunch of steps. He doesn't have to jump onto TikTok. It is a lot of work. I don't know how they do it. But you know, having recorded music is extremely important. And it sounds like he's more of a live musician. And so that's sometimes where things don't cross over as much between people who are more focused on live shows and live theatrics, because the music file, the actual recorded project, is what moves around and is what your moniker and your moneymaker basically is. So for him to record a project and then release it, so he can release it on Bandcamp, and Bandcamp is a platform that allows people to pay for it. So if he wants to also monetize it, it's like iTunes, but more grassroots. And on Friday, they give a larger percentage to the artist, but they also have an extremely great tagging system. That's one of the reasons why I love that platform. They go really, really in depth in the genres. So you don't have to go to just like jazz. It will go from jazz and then we'll break out to different ones. Tagging is really important when you're engaging with the digital space, because those are the things that we search and that's how it brings up. So you know, he can mark off that he's from Calgary, because I think Calgary is one of the location-based ones, and then go on genre, and then you can do any subgenres, but the tagging that exists there allows for people to search it. And there's also a lot more niche music on there. So they do features, they have a lot of international music and a lot of international eyes on that platform. It's definitely caters to a really cool audience, but you can do the exact same for SoundCloud. You can do the exact same for Spotify. I don't believe they have as much tagging capabilities on the back end, but I don't know their back end very well. But you can put stuff into your bio. But you know, that's platforms where you can be discovered by audiences and then also be discovered by people who are looking for music, because there's also musicians or music supervisors and anybody else just searching naturally. We have algorithms that just push things forward. So, you know, a few years ago when Kanye's song No More Parties in LA came up, there was an algorithm that had a small artist that was the next song. So that artist got so many streams because they were just the next song there. So you have to, you know, give into the algorithm a little bit for people to get served, because if I'm already interested in that genre, I'm more likely to get served that type of music, but that's based on tagging. So tagging is going to be really important there. The next thing is when you have your digital presence, is make sure that you have contact information, and make sure it's contact information that you search. Email is better than phone. That's usually the predominant thing, but if people can't get your email, they will use your phone. Make sure you search for it. If you have a website, it's better to have direct contact information than to have one of those contact me, fill out the form type doodads. Usually, at least when I see it, and I know other supervisors are the same, you're not expecting that you're going to get as fast of an answer or that you're going to get a direct contact. So if I don't really absolutely want the song, or if I don't have enough time to think about getting the song, I'm not going to put it in front of the music of my clients, or I'm not going to go after it, because then I'm putting myself in a bad situation. There's also a lot of different, as Amos was saying, to get in touch with music supervisors, to learn about licensing and to learn about different opportunities there's different sync summits or sync related one-on-one networking that happens. The Vancouver International Film Festival does one. Usually Canadian Music Week does one. They have them in different places around the world. I've done them in Milan and in PEI. And so those are opportunities for musicians to participate. Usually there's a fee. And then you get one-on-one sessions with music supervisors. They're usually like 10 minutes each. You go in, you do your elevator pitch. People leave me with links, or, I've gotten CDs and records and USB keys. And so there's different ways of interacting it, but that's one of the true ways of really getting past that little ivory tower barrier towards it and get under direct contact, because we never know what we're going to need. So we need to know a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You should have a full sounding pop show, and all of a sudden they need a Haitian drummer because we've gone into a different circumstance, or they're walking past, or, they visited somebody whose grandfather is from Haiti and he has it playing in the background. It was a full pop production. And then all of a sudden I needed that one thing, and I need to know who I can get it from. So it's really important to be found and then look at those different unique opportunities to get one-on-one time with music supervisors. You can also keep in touch with the Guild of Music Supervisors. There is a UK one, a US one, and then a Canadian one. They post when they have certain events going on or panels where you can hear about music supervisors. So there's a lot of different ways to keep in touch.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I know I'm going to a lot of the conferences like the APAP and CMW. A lot of those conferences actually offer opportunities to do speed dating with music supervisors and different people like that. Back in the day when I was young, we were told to watch television and look at films and think about and check to see who the music supervisors were of different programs, so that we would, if something sounded like it was something that we made music for, we would think that maybe this is a good match for us, so we could contact that music supervisor. But that was a long time ago. That was like maybe 5 years ago. All right, we have probably a few minutes left. Is there anything at all that you guys think that that we haven't mentioned, or that you would love to mention to the people out there in terms of music and film, and what to look out for, or what to be aware of? Any great tips that you can think of that may not have been mentioned so far?
Just to follow up what you were saying, the modern day equivalent of watching the credits is IMDb. So you can
You're
sleuth.
so much younger than me.
I'm not. But you can sleuth quite well on IMDb.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
If anyone's curious.
Yes. Anyone else? Amos, any famous last words you'd like to share with us?
Music, budget-wise, often suffers, right? Just speaking from producerial standpoint, and it's a bad habit we get into in production, is that post budget is because we're not there yet. It gets chop, and then within that post budget, there's music, and I can't remember how many times I've been to that point where it's like, is that what we left for music? This is not right. So that's a big caution out there, is making, whether it's a short film, a documentary, your first feature, whatever it is, protect that music budget. Music is huge, and it often gets relegated to this just because of where it happens to sit in the budget, which is right at the bottom at the very end of the whole process. It's a weird thing, and I've seen it over the years. So as much as you can protect that, do it. It's tempting. Oh, I could just take it. No, don't do it. Keep that music budget as high as you possibly can, so you can get the best composers, the best artists, and that you can possibly afford. That's all.
Thank you. That is a great one. Thank you. Cheryl, any famous last words?
Just I'll repeat what others have said. those of us who've been in the business for a while are always looking for people to help, talented people to bring in. Our doors are open as much as we are able to have them open, and we're available. So I would say the networking piece is really invaluable, and it goes both ways. I learn as much from young people in the business coming up as they do from me. Kai has been quite an education here. And apart from that, just to say thank you so much, Shakora, for facilitating this great conversation. I've loved meeting all of you. And
Yeah, thank
I
you.
do hope we get to all work together on something, some amazing Canadian project someday.
Mhm.
Here, here.
I agree. I thank you all. I feel very humbled and honored to sit in this virtual room with all of you, and other than Amos, and I didn't know that any of you existed. And my world feels so much bigger and so much more inspiring, because being able to see yourself reflected means that there's so much more possible. So I really, really appreciate you all being here and sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience, and sharing opportunities for other people to grow. And that's a big thing. And, I grew up with my elders teaching me. So I thank you for taking on the role of elders in this panel and passing on your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So we're going to say goodbye now, and we hope you've enjoyed our panel. I want to say thanks again to Robert, who had to unfortunately leave us a little bit earlier, but not without sharing everything that he knew, and to Cheryl Fogo, to Simon, to Kaya, and to Amos. My name is Shakora Saida. We thank you all for being here, and take good care of each other. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.